you everyone for coming tonight. We'll get started with the pledge to the flag by Councilwoman Kerr.
Salute the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. Roll call, please.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Present.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Present.
Councilman Froelich.
Present.
Councilman Isaacson.
Present.
Supervisor Zalati.
Present. Next up, we need a motion to accept the minutes of the May 26th meeting and the June 1st special meeting. Anybody?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, Brenda, hold the board, please.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to our opening public comment. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? I won't say we have it perfect, but if you get really close to the microphone, it was working a minute. If you get about 3 inches away, it really doesn't work.
Okay.
There you go.
Martha Icarucci. I live at 9 Russell Street in Boston Spa. First, I just want to say thank you to the board for holding the public hearing on salvage and junkyards last week. It's important to allow the residents of Milton to voice their concerns about what is happening in their neighborhoods. So thank you. The town board and the residents of the town should be made aware of recent actions relating to the hearing on salvage and junkyards. Before the meeting began, a flyer was inappropriately distributed to each seat in the room. Once this was made aware to the supervisor, they were all collected. Clearly, the purpose of this flyer was to denigrate and intimidate one of the members of a group of neighbors who are challenging the business practices at Planet Salvage. The allegations in this flyer are several years old, and investigations determined that the allegations could not be substantiated. Following the public meeting, this flyer was mailed to residents living in the neighborhoods around Planet Salvage. The flyer was not signed by anyone, nor did it include any indication of who had sent it. Similarly, it is not known who paid for the printing and the distribution of the flyers. This action was a cowardly attempt to discredit a member of our community and a resident of the town of Milton. This is someone who has worked on behalf of all the residents of the town who have been affected by the operations of Planet Salvage. No one should condone this action, and everyone should be focused on the issues surrounding the operations of Planet Salvage and not on personal allegations made against one individual. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Hang on, Mr. Ross.
Frank Rossi Jr., 63 Saratoga Avenue, Apartment B, also Scott. Good to be back in the live room. You all look a lot better in person than you do on a Zoom screen, you got it right. Good. Thank you, sir. I just got done actually watching the hour and 40-minute melee from last week, and I do want to say to Councilman Froelich, especially, I was impressed by the attempt, and I think 3 years ago the attempt as well, to negotiate a resolution. I look back, I've been friends with Judge Walsh back in the days when he was the town of Boston's attorney back then. And he had to deal with the Dolomite situation and some of the electronic sign situations that were in front of the town of Boston back when. One of the pieces of advice he always gave me was, you don't want to let a court ultimately latch on to these situations, because when it happens, or you know what the resolution is for one side, there's no going back. I think the danger here, and I think John knows this as much as anybody, is you're trying to get an answer to a question that I don't know if the side that loses on that will be able to live with the ramifications of what that means, because somebody's going to have a power position ultimately once it's resolved. Mr. Supervisor, you said a couple of times you didn't feel it was the town's job or role to solve some of, or to, I guess, step into some of the situations or questions that John was raising. I disagree. I think it's very much the town's job in a situation like this, because I think we know the side that doesn't get on the right side of this is not going to be able to live with the ramifications. Mr. Dawson is clearly the victor, per se, of whatever we determine. What does he have to give up at that point? Nothing. When you have him in a position where he may be willing to negotiate, to at least give something up in this, that's what you have to do. That's what they taught us in law school way back when, from day one. Negotiations workshop. Bob Mnuchin was my professor. He's written many books about it. This is the time to get that negotiation, not after everybody knows what their positions are and doesn't have to give a lick at that point. So John, I do credit you with trying there, and I would ask the board to kind of reconsider some of the positions that you took that day and try to get a resolution before I would tell you it's too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lambs.
Hello, Michael Landis, 272 Meadowlark Drive, Boston Spa. Please allow me to echo Martha's condemnation of recent tactics. I don't think strategy of personal destruction should play a role in our discussion of town code and licensing and zoning. It's not why I came up here to talk, though. I would like to address on the agenda, thank you for putting the noise issue on the agenda, but what concerns me and many of my friends and neighbors is that the full report that we produced will now be reduced down to an easy and simple noise problem. And the purpose of that report was to demonstrate that it is not just a noise problem, but there are serious fundamental issues out here that outweigh even the noise issue. Start with the licensing issue. The licensing is wrong. It's inappropriate, or it wasn't issued correctly, whether it's the town's fault or whoever's fault. You're talking about, look, the house is on fire, and you're talking about what color the curtains are. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, you know, and look at the other issues. The town code issue should be brought up to New York State levels. We're talking about seismic issues. I mean, measuring sound is not going to tell you about the seismic booms that we feel. There are so many issues intertwined here. I worry that you're going to simplify it down to the noise issue, and thank you for acting on that, maybe. But I'd like to also see action on the other issues we raised, primarily the licensing issue. And then we can move on to other things. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in person? Mr. LaPatte.
Tony Okada, Ichabod Lane, Boston Spa, New York. There are two things I'd like to say. First, I feel sorry for the people that live over I live down the road here, and you can hear the noise and the booms if you're out walking early in the morning. So I can imagine what they're going through living next door. Second, I have a question for the board. Does anyone know what's going on at the airport lately?
Only what I read.
With regards to,
Anything? Do you people know what's going on over there? What's coming? What are they doing? You don't know, none of you. I didn't think you did.
no,
They're going to buy houses around the airport now that are for sale. Why are they doing this?
They're doing it because of the runway protection zone.
No, they're doing it because they're going to increase the runways.
Tony,
All FA, no, I don't want to hear, no, no. First was the fence. That fence was only a recommendation from FAA. They did not have to do it. And all the stuff that they're doing now was brought up at the master plan that wasn't done. And now they're fixing it. So I think it's 3 years they had to do all this. So, you can say what you want. I know from Republican boards now, you're Democrats. That has no difference. These are people. This is in the middle of our town. Can you imagine they increased that to homes? I would lose my home. We already saw the plans what would happen if they increased the runway space. So, I'm going to say something that I know you're not going to like this, but Dan Luza had our back. I don't care what he did here or didn't do, he stood up and he fought for us. And I hope you people, when the time comes, stand up, grow some you know what, and fight for these people in Saratoga. Because I don't want to lose my home, and about 30 other people don't. This is only the beginning. Mark my words. Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
I'm here to express still my support for addressing the issues at Planet, and I too agree with Michael Landis, Michelle Boyette, 81 Scarlet. And I support all those people who are asking you to address seriously those issues. And it's not just the sound. I talked to another neighbor. She was a young woman who's afraid to even mention last meeting that come have breakfast at my table. It shakes. That is totally inappropriate. That is more of a public nuisance. And I think that's a route we're going to eventually have to go to, or at least the town should consider, because it is obviously above and beyond their operations. Again, to reiterate what I said last week, you have a code, you had a license, but you're talking about equipment that is significantly more powerful and capable of doing much more than what occurred in the 60s. You can have a large amount of weight to be lifted, higher, and then dropped down. This is not equivalent to what was granted. And you really need to address the licensing and the true operations that are going on in there. You're talking about DEC doing inspections, but if they say they're classified as A, they're only going to be inspected for A. But if their true operations are B, then they're not being inspected properly. So we really need to understand the true operations, understand the licensing, and really look at the grandfathering, because it doesn't really apply, because it's not the same, you could say it's the same type of work, but it's certainly not the same operations, not with the level of equipment that is being used there, the amount, the quantity, and the power that it can deliver. Thank you.
Cheryl Licata, Oricabod Lane, Boston Spa. I would like to thank Barbara Kerr for keeping me posted on what's happening at the airport. I did read the minutes from the Saratoga County Planning, or what is it, Buildings and Grounds from June 1st, and discovered that the county is going to purchase, well, the FAA is going to purchase all of the land that comes for sale that borders the airport. This is very concerning. There are 2 parcels right now that are going to be purchased, apparently. People voted to send it on to the supervisors, so I'm hoping our supervisor will vote against that. And I'm hoping that in the near future, we start to hear more information from the board and anyone running for the board in the future here of what their opinions are on this issue, because it's critical to us, and I think it's critical to the entire county. I would like to say, I would like to say the county should not purchase, but do not let the county purchase any more town of Milton land, period. End of story. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? sorry, John.
John Leonard, Van Tassel Lane. I only hear bits and pieces about what's going on at the airport. So Mr. Supervisor, as a county supervisor also, would you be kind enough to give me some information of exactly what is going on? What does the county intend to do? What are the plans are? Could you please tell us what's going on, because I don't know. And could you use a microphone?
I will, yes. At the last Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, there was discussions about two parcels of land. One is on the northeast corner of the airport. It's a residence right now. It's about a half-acre lot. There will be a motion to purchase it. I have spoken many times about not purchasing any more land at the airport. The other section is on the northwest corner of the airport. It is a very small piece of land, it's a triangle that is in a piece of property that is before the planning board now, I believe, for a project. The entire parcel is 20-something acres. The county is not interested in buying the whole 20 acres. They want to buy a very small triangle that is in the section that would be in the runway protection zone. I know Mr. Licata is not going to want to hear this. I have spoken several times to the Department of Public Works and the Buildings and Grounds. Under the current master plan that's in force for the next 3 years, there is no plan to expand the airport. I don't know what's going to happen in 3 years. I have made my thoughts known on this for the last year and a half, and whoever ends up being the supervisor down the road will have that issue to deal with. I can tell you that some of the smaller communities in the smaller towns in the county are also against any expansion of the airport. The county has filed, or will be filing, for a grant that the state is going to be processing in the next few months. It's a multi-million-dollar grant for airport upgrades. It does not include any runway or facility upgrades. It's strictly for building upgrades for our airport and one out in the Syracuse-Rochester area and another one downstate a little ways. After LaGuardia and Kennedy got millions and millions of dollars, they decided that they would give us $250 million for 3 or 4 airports up here. One of the things that we are looking into is to upgrade and remodel the building that is what would be called the terminal building, put new siding on it and perhaps expand it just a touch. But at this time, there are no plans to expand the runways. I don't know how to say that any clearer. I've voted against a couple of projects that were up there. So my 3 minutes are up. I voted several times on projects that were up there, and a couple other people have voted with me, but with 21 supervisors coming out on the end of a 20-3 vote, things still happen. So yes, I have argued against any expansion at the airport and will continue to do so.
Mr. Supervisor, I'm going to correct you on that. I've spoken, and everyone knows I've disclosed, I know people who own that property, and they're negotiating for the whole 24 acres.
Well, the last meeting that we had, Barbara, they said they weren't interested in the whole 24 acres, they wanted a little triangle. Now, that was the meeting that was a couple of weeks ago. If things have changed, they don't tell us that until we have a Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. You're a little closer to this situation than I am.
I'm not sure they're going to come up with enough money, but I know it's in the talking stage.
Well, when I left the meeting, the last Buildings and Grounds meeting, the decision was the county had no interest in purchasing 25 acres of land. If things have changed since then, I'm unaware of that.
Has the FAA advised the county to buy as much property as possible?
Not to my knowledge. Okay, Okay, I'm gonna go to the folks who have their hands up. Ms. Burton.
Supervisor Zlotnick, this is David Burton. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Sticky Court in Boston Spa. I just want to first thank you for outlining some of the issues around the airport, and would like to request that possibly, since it's smack dab in the middle of our town, it's something that could be more frequent, where we can have kind of a quick update on the airport and things that are happening there. I think a lot of people would be interested. And also to clear the air on some of this, the property acquisitions is something that's always going to continually happen. It's never a request of the FAA. As long as the county receives money, grant money, it's part of what the county is supposed to do. FAA gives you money, and the FAA asks, hey, you need to try to acquire this property that's around the airport. And it's all for future expansion. An airport, the FAA never wants to see an airport close. They always want to see it expand in the end. So as long as they continue to receive money for projects, that will always happen. They will always continue to expand and grow bigger and bigger, acquiring more and more property. The fact that that airport is right in our backyards is becoming a situation where nobody wants to live in the town of Milton anymore. Not only with the noise and everything that occurs from the airport, but the noise that's happening for the people and my fellow neighbors over on with the Planet Recycle. It's just becoming this place, this dead ground where there is no community, there is no center, there's nobody wants to do anything here. And I feel our supervisors have a responsibility to us to ensure that our families can grow here and continue to grow here. We've been here 22 years. It's disheartening. Supervisor Zlotnick, I sent you an email back on May 18th and still haven't received a simple reply from you, just asking me, hey, are we on a mowing schedule for the cul-de-sacs? I know there's lots of other issues that are happening, lots of other things that are going on, and I understand, but just a quick, simple reply would have been great. If you could have replied back to me and said, yeah, we don't have it in the budget to mow the cul-de-sacs. When they get up to 2 feet tall in weeds, and we have to go out there with our own mowers, and we hit rocks and everything else that's pushed up from the plows, it gets to be expensive. The fact that we don't own the first 10 feet of our properties, everybody in that neighborhood, because of the setbacks, but yet everybody assumes the responsibility of those and maintains them and takes care of them and mows them and does everything else, it's the least we can ask from our town to come in and mow our cul-de-sacs. So if I would appreciate a reply back to that email. I did include Superintendent Forbes on that as well, and haven't received an email from either of you. Thank you.
Mr. Dawson.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Tony Dawson, Plant Waste Recycling, 274 Greenfield Avenue, Boston Spa, New York. I had no idea that we were going to have another special board meeting about my company tonight. Had I known, I would have attended in person. Everyone seems to be offended by the mail or the handout that was distributed about Mr. Landis. However, no one seems concerned about the illegally distributed 4-page document that was handed out over Memorial Day weekend in efforts to denigrate, intimidate, and cowardly affect my company with factually incorrect information, which was in no way, shape, or form in alignment with the motion or the intent of the special meeting that was to be held. At this time, I would like to thank the members of the board for putting together the June 1st meeting. I feel it was very informative for both sides, as well as members of the board. It gave me an opportunity to hear our neighbors' concerns and to share with them some of the highlights of Chapter 103 and some other local laws, and the due diligence that we followed in 2015 before we purchased this property. At this point, I am confident that the town Milton attorneys have reviewed the information to determine our license to operate under Town of Milton Chapter 103 is in fact valid. Since the June 1st meeting, I have followed up with the members of the board regarding some of the matters that I felt were of great importance, including but not limited to the handout that was distributed, full of factually incorrect information, controlling junk in General Municipal Law 136, hours of operation, sound study and noise ordinance.
1 minute, sir.
Also during the June 1st meeting, I handed out a 33-page PowerPoint to all board members. This document more than covered all proposed draft changes to Chapter 103. And since December of 2020, I feel the records are abundantly clear, and I have clearly articulated my position along with detailed, credible, supporting documentation. I do hope this board takes all this information seriously and into consideration when it comes to any action that may negatively impact my business, including but not limited to the item on the agenda tonight, as a proposed draft changes to 103 that I received for the first time on June 7th of 2021 would be devastating to my business and also a waste of taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, are you there? I am asking him to unmute, folks. He's just not responding. Okay, with that, we will close the opening public comment, move on to business. Next up is a presentation by MJ Engineering regarding an update on the Route 50 transition study.
Good evening, Supervisor and Board. I'm Jackie Pace, Director of Planning Services at MJ Engineering. It is really great to see everybody in person and to see such a great turnout this evening. What I'd like to do today is to share a little bit with you, provide an update with regard to the Route 50 corridor enhancement study. I'm going to give a brief overview of the study so that everybody is starting from the same page in terms of the work that's been done over the last year or so. And then share what the preferred corridor concept and intersection concepts are. Thank you, Brenda, very much. I didn't hand it up. And then talk about the future land uses that have been identified for the corridor, and then discuss next steps.
Wait just a second, Jackie. I just thought, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. People at home, I don't think can see this. Do I have to make you a co-host, or?
I'm not connected to Zoom, so they're probably not going to be able to turn it up.
Oh, it's pointing at it.
Oh, okay. So for those folks listening at home, this presentation will be posted to the project website tomorrow morning, which is miltonroute50.com, so we can share that with you. So in terms of this study, the committee guiding this study included Supervisor Zlotnick, your building inspector, Bill Lewis, J.D. Wood as a zoning board representative, and Kevin Harkins, which was, he was a community at large member, if you will. We did have assistance from town staff, assisting with a variety of tasks, and then the MJ team provided the technical assistance throughout this project. The intent of the enhancement study was to identify transportation and land use recommendations to guide growth in the corridor, looking at everything from land use and zoning, access management, which is essentially the number of curb cuts along the corridor, complete streets, which is looking at providing accessibility and convenience to multiple modes of transportation, transit, bike, pedestrians, as well as vehicles, and looking at transportation and intersection improvements throughout the corridor. Those of you sitting probably cannot see the last bullet here, but it's also to update the 2005 Route 50 transition area plan.
Jen, they can't hear you at home. You might want to use one of these other microphones.
Can I talk?
Yeah, come right up here and use one of the long ones.
Sorry.
Sorry about that, when you want to.
Hopefully, ooh.
Be so close.
All right, I think you can hear me now. Thank you. So ultimately, the intent of the study is to update the 2005 Route 50 Transition Area Strategic Plan. The study area boundary begins at the municipal boundary with the village of Ballston Spa, travels north along the Route 50 corridor to the boundary with the city of Saratoga Springs. It does include the intersection with North Line Road and Route 50 and does go over to Saratoga Avenue to the east. There were two primary tasks with regard to this study. The first was looking at the corridor enhancement, which means looking not only at transportation improvements throughout the corridor, but also future land uses throughout the corridor that can support those transportation enhancements. The second primary task was to look at intersection improvements at the North Line Road and Route 50 intersection. And there were two concepts evaluated for this. The first was an improvement with the existing signal style of intersection, and the second was a roundabout. Some key tasks to support those primary tasks included several committee meetings beginning in August of 2020. We also met in October. In 2021, we met in February, and then in April, the committee met to discuss these preferred concepts and reach consensus on what I'm going to present in just a moment. Throughout this process, we have had stakeholder meetings in coordination with a variety of stakeholders, including representatives from emergency services, the New York State DOT. Route 50 is within the jurisdiction of New York State DOT. Various regional partners, the Capital District Transportation Committee, the Capital District Transportation Authority, which runs the bus route along here, as well as Saratoga County. And Saratoga County does have jurisdiction over North Line Road, as well as key property owners. There was an existing conditions evaluation conducted, including a complete streets audit, where our staff members walked the corridor to get a sense of what it felt like to be a pedestrian or cyclist within the corridor. And then in terms of public engagement, we did hold two virtual meetings, one in the fall of 2020 in September, again in December of 2020, where we presented the multiple concepts and got input from the public. And then also conducted an online survey that was live September through October to gather input from the community about their vision for this corridor. So let's move on to the preferred corridor and intersection concepts. So based on input from the existing conditions evaluation and the various public outreach that we had, including stakeholders in the public meetings, working with the committee, the preferred concept for the transportation improvements along the corridor is to have a multi-use path and raised median. So that would include new curbs on both sides of the roadway corridor, a multi-use path on the east side, so that's the side, the Carousel Village, the Ballston carpet tile side of the corridor. A limited sidewalk on the west side at the north end of the corridor near where a lot of the retail already exists, and then also at the south end of the corridor, also where some of that retail exists, with mid-block crossings to allow for pedestrians to cross over to the multi-use path safely. To accommodate all of this and try to keep these improvements within the existing right-of-way as much as possible, this concept includes a reducing of the shoulder width to the minimum standard, which is 6 feet. Currently, the shoulder width varies and can be as great as 13 feet in some areas along the corridor. And it also includes a shifted roadway alignment, so shifting the center line of the road to the west to accommodate the mixed-use path. And hopefully folks that are joining me here in person can see this graphic to the bottom. This is a cross-section, and sorry Jim, I'm pointing this in the back of your head. This is a cross-section of the roadway improvements for this concept. If you are, this is looking north toward the city of Saratoga Springs, if you have the Village of Ballston Spa behind you. So this, imagine a parking lot of a lot of the existing businesses that are there. This would be a 10-foot multi-use path. Adjacent to that is what we call a buffer strip, which is a grass strip that allows for planting of street trees that can provide shade. It also enhances the aesthetics of the corridor. It's an opportunity to introduce pedestrian scale lighting as well. Then we have a 6-foot shoulder, a 12-foot travel lane. And then here's the raised median. This graphic is showing the raised median. And I do want to point out that the concept considers a raised median at key locations throughout the corridor. Think of kind of a boulevard-style appearance. Again, from an aesthetic standpoint, it also is functional because it can reduce speed. It's a traffic calming tool. But what we realize is that there are a lot of existing businesses, and accessibility, access from a vehicle turning movement is important. So the raised median only in key locations so that you can still have access in and out of existing businesses. And then the southbound is a travel lane here, the shoulder, and then an area here for perhaps some additional lighting, or this would be where the sidewalk at the north end or the south end would be. Part of what helped the committee to come to this determination that that is the preferred concept is input that was received from the public at the December meeting. And so option 2, you can see here on the screen, received 53% of the vote during that interactive poll during that virtual meeting. Moving on to the intersection. So I mentioned earlier there were 2 concepts evaluated for the intersection improvements at North Line Road and Route 50. One was a more traditional signal improvement, and then the 2-lane roundabout. And the 2-lane roundabout is what has been identified as the preferred improvement here. And so this is the green area in the center. Here is a center island. There's a truck apron which allows for larger vehicles and emergency vehicles to ride up on it to get through more quickly. There is a raised median on either side, each leg of this intersection. There are pedestrian crosswalks here to allow for easier pedestrian access, and sidewalks proposed that would ultimately tie into that multi-use path. I do want to point out the exact location of this and the impact on adjacent properties is something that would need to be evaluated at the design level of, which would be a next step in this process. But this was designed at the concept level in a way to try to minimize impacts on adjacent properties as much as possible. And it did take into account what is now the new Stewart's here in the southeastern corner of this intersection to not impede with the new access points there. And again, we did ask the public in December what their thoughts were in terms of the concepts and the preference, and the roundabout received 83% of the vote of those that participated in December. Moving on to future land uses. So you remember earlier on, the intent of this study is to look not only at transportation and traffic improvements, but land uses, and a lot of times transportation practices and land uses are really tied closely together. So the idea here is to think about land uses that can support multiple modes of transportation, vehicles as well as transit, pedestrians and bicycles. So creating an environment that can support all of this. Supporting existing businesses is something that came out as very important, and allowing for sustainable growth, allowing for new development to occur or infill and redevelopment to occur as businesses might turn over moving into the future. And at the heart of all of this is really what we call placemaking. And that's creating a sense of place. It's creating a unique identity within the corridor that attracts businesses and residents and creates more of a destination here as opposed to just a corridor to travel through. So what does that mean in terms of future land uses? To achieve all of that, it's really about looking at more of a mix of commercial with residential that can support that commercial. So allowing for more housing options to support the commercial activity. If you have housing options that are within walking distance and close by to active retail and commercial and office space, it can help to support those businesses. This can also create a more inviting and attractive atmosphere for multiple travel modes. And again, moving away from a transition corridor where people are transitioning from the village of Alston Spa to the city of Saratoga Springs and refocusing this as a destination here in the town of Milton. So in terms of future land uses, and these are kind of broad conversations about land uses, I realize, but looking at identifying the North Line Road and Route 50 intersection as a gateway node, letting people realize, hey, I'm in the town of Milton now. Let me see what there is to see. Looking at this northern portion as a commercial mixed-use area, again, allowing for more mix of uses, some flexibility in terms of site design there. Looking at perhaps higher density residential in this area here, which is the southeast corner of the intersection, if you will, between North Line Road and Saratoga Avenue. Saratoga Avenue circles around right about here. There's actually, and if you don't know it, take a little drive-by. There's actually a multifamily, two-family, multifamily homes there already that are kind of tucked away. So perhaps there's more opportunity for that there and to create more walkable connections to what's happening on Route 50. Then there's the southern commercial mixed-use area. That's where a lot of the retail commercial activity is already occurring there, looking at ways to allow for infill and redevelopment as needed. But understanding to the west side of the corridor, there's some environmentally constrained land, and so we heard from the community it's important to protect those environmental resources, so recognizing that. And then the area along the Saratoga Ave corridor, that currently is primarily single-family residential, looking at just allowing that to continue as is and not looking at any changes there. So what do we hear from the public survey that took place in the fall? We asked folks what other land uses they would like to encourage in the area. We heard things like sidewalks and crosswalks, keeping the open space, small businesses, restaurants, housing, nature trails, bike trails, safe bike lanes, sidewalk, crosswalk. I think you're getting in a sense. There's some themes that are arising here. Bike paths, somebody mentioned Ellsworth Commons like development, and we took that to mean more mixed use. We looked at uses specifically. Again, you'll see some repetitiveness here, but natural areas, restaurants, service businesses, professional office, retail. These are the types of land uses folks wanted to encourage. The residential side of things was a little more split, but what we've seen over and over again in other communities is that residential piece can really help to support all of these other land uses that the community has identified they would like to see there. So what does that mean in terms of land use changes? So it does mean that the town will need to look at possible changes within its zoning to be able to support this and have this actually come to fruition at some point in time. One concept is corridor-wide design guidelines, have a more aesthetic, higher quality consistency of the aesthetic throughout the corridor. Again, perhaps it's just as simple as site layout and design, so that the parking isn't the first thing people see. Maybe it's the structures, the buildings, the businesses that are the first things that people see. Landscaping and architecture. Possible zoning amendment might include greater mixed uses with commercial and retail as well as residential. Currently, the zoning within this corridor is primarily focused on commercial only, with some minor exceptions. Consider greater flexibility for development that is coming into this area. And also looking at things like shared parking and consolidating driveways so that there aren't as many access points and turning movements which can make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. In terms of next steps, we're working to finalize the enhancement study with these preferred corridor concepts as well as cost estimates and an identification of potential funding sources. We are recommending that the town implement some of the land use recommendations. The land use side of things is something that is within the purview of the town to be able to modify and influence change for. Part of that would include a comprehensive plan amendment. Your current comprehensive plan includes the 2005 Route 50 corridor study as an appendix. And so if you wanted to move forward with the land use recommendations, you would need to amend the comp plan to include this study, if you wished to, to replace that appendix. It's a procedural thing, and your town attorney can certainly elaborate on that. And then follow up with a zoning update specific to this corridor. And this is currently the commercial transition CT district. Coordination with DOT and Saratoga County will be essential and critical. As I mentioned before, Route 50 is a DOT jurisdiction. North Line Road is Saratoga County jurisdiction. But we have had conversations with them throughout the duration of this study, so they are well aware of what's going on and provided feedback and input that has been folded into this so far. And ultimately, the town can work with DOT and the county as partners to identify funding sources for the design, which would be the next step in these improvements and ultimate construction. This study, these are concept levels, so there are next steps that would need to take place before any of this would happen, there is funding that would need to be secured for that, and there are funding sources out there. There's a transportation alternatives program, there's the congestion management and air quality program, there's the transportation improvement program, so there's a whole list that we will identify through this study to assist the town and partners in moving forward. So that's what I have for this evening. This was meant to be a quick shot. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has, but again, this will be posted for those listening at home to the project website, miltonroute50.com. If you tap on the meetings link, it'll be there tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Jim.
Perfect.
We're going to give Kathy just a minute or two to pack up here before we move on. Does the board have any questions or thoughts for Jackson?
We know how to reach it.
Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, first up is Resolution 34, approving the Public Employer Health Emergency Plan for the town. Whereas as a result of the recent COVID-19 pandemic and to better prepare for future such events in which there is a declared public emergency involving a communicable disease or diseases, and as is required by New York State labor law, Section 27-C, and the New York State Education Law, Section 2801-A, as amended, the Town Board of the Town of Milton has prepared a public employer health emergency plan, which requires a policy be in place for town operations in the event of a declared public emergency involving a communicable disease, and which plan includes the identification of essential positions, facilitation of remote work for non-essential positions, provisions of personal protection equipment, and protocols for support, contacting, and tracing. And be it further resolved that the Town of Milton Public Employer Health Emergency Plan shall be distributed with signed acknowledgement to all town officials and employees and posted accordingly, and may be amended from time to time by the Town Board resolution. Therefore be resolved by the Town Board of the Town of Milton. Can I get a motion to approve Resolution 34?
So moved. I'll second.
Any discussion? Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Thank you. We're going to put Resolution 35 on hold for a week, or until our next meeting. Dave has looked into it, and there's a couple of things we need to clean up before we approve that vehicle. Moving on to Resolution 36, resolution for dedication of Town of Milton highways and roadways, more commonly known as McRae Drive, Morgan Lane, Stark Terrace, Ackland Boulevard, Hoffman Court, Hoffman Road, MacArthur Drive, Marshall Place, and Benedict Court. Whereas Tri-Tom Development Inc., Thomas Ferone, has offered to cede the Town of Milton certain roadways and/or portions of roadways. Whereas all documents have been properly reviewed and approved by the town engineer and the town attorney, whereas the town highway superintendent has recommended and approved of the acceptance of by the town of said roadways and/or portions of the roadways. Now therefore be it resolved that the following offer of secession be granted, and that the following roadways and/or portions of the roadways be accepted by the town for dedication, and that the consent of the town board and board members to the highway dedication for the following offers of secession are hereby given and acknowledged. McCray Drive, Morgan Lane, Stark Terrace, Ackland Boulevard, some portion of Ackland Boulevard, Hoffman Court, portion of Hoffman Road, MacArthur Drive, a portion of Marshall Place, and Benedict Court. Said roadways being and/or are more particularly described on the copy of the proffered deeds annexed hereto and set forth as built on the documents provided. Resolved by the town board. Can I get a motion, please, on resolution 36?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Next up, resolution 37, to appoint highway department working supervisor for the remainder of the term recently vacated. Whereas the town highway department working supervisor recently retired, leaving a vacancy in the position of working supervisor for the highway department. Now therefore be it resolved, the town board hereby confirms the appointment of Kevin Ubrick to the position of working supervisor for the highway department for a term commencing June 14th, 2021, at a rate of $25.88 per hour, moving from a grade 5 to a grade 7, pursuant to the town's salary schedule. Resolved here by the town board of the town of Milton. And to get a motion to approve resolution 37.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Any discussion? Brenda, pull the board, please.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Next, we need a motion to allow Tina Blanchard to buy out 1 week of vacation time.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Brenda?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes. Next up is a discussion on the independent engineering firms for the noise study of junkyards in the town. I believe last week I sent you some information on people who can do sound and noise surveys, and I think Councilwoman Kerr, you sent us one too, right?
Actually, I think I sent you two.
Okay.
I want to say something, Harry. I don't want this to sound like it's only the noise. That's not what I was going for here. I did get a letter that I spoke to one gentleman, Steve LeFavor, and I told him we wanted to start with the noise and the vibration. His recommendation was start with the noise and go from there. If you feel we need that vibration study along with it, I'll ask him to expand the scope. I'm supposed to be getting a letter from him with the scope of the project and some pricing. And I really think, to be fair to everybody, we have to get at least a couple, okay? Sterling Environment that you sent us, Benny, I'm going to ask to eliminate them because I feel there's a conflict of interest there.
Okay.
I have Labella Acoustics, which I'm trying to get in touch with, and speaking to Damien Bell. So that'll give us two. I did have a fourth one, recycle management and corrosion services, but I have a feeling they're more towards the environmental study, which will be a much, if we go with that direction, it'll be a much more expanded study. I also asked that the town attorneys look at the grandfathering, and the attorney and the supervisor will have to address that. So do you think you want those expanded times? Because I'll get a hold of these two companies and ask them.
Can I ask why you eliminated the one company? What was the count?
Sander recommended them.
Sander.
Sander, how do you say Sander's last name?
Onville?
Govier. And he has also been speaking with the neighbors, helping them out. And I don't want Mr. Dawson to think that
Makes
that
sense.
we're going one side or another. I want to try to be fair to both sides.
I agree with you, Barb, that we should put it out to the three companies. I read through them all, they all seem to have a handle on what we're looking for. We just need to put out the same request to each of the three so we get back the same, can you hear me? The same quotes. So we
That's
get-
why I'm going to ask, first of all, we don't need a quote on it because professional
Well-
services. We may pick the one that's a little more expensive.
Correct.
Because we figure we're getting better service from that or, or get more expanded scope. So, but I will make sure they know what we want done, the scope of it, and give us some estimates on the pricing.
Yeah, my assumption is they'll probably look at Google Maps and see what the whole area looks like and then figure out
Well,
what they do from there.
Are you confident we can have
that next meeting?
prices by next meeting?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
I thought from the one I would already, from Stephen, I'd already have it, but we can come in today, so.
Anybody have anything else? All right, so before our next meeting, then you'll be able to give out the information to the board so we can make a decision on the company?
Hopefully I'll be able to pass it to the board before the next meeting, so we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody have anything under old business?
Yeah, what are we doing with the rate review? Are we just tabling that for now?
I think given the circumstances of what's happening, we're going to hold off on that until we can figure out where we fit in the middle there. Are we allowed to say what's happening? I mean, I think there's a lawsuit going on, John, and I don't want to get in the middle of it.
I guess my feeling is though the lawsuit could last for years, the way courts track things out. At some point, we need to make a decision.
I agree, but right now I believe we're involved in the middle of it. If the court decides the town doesn't be in the middle of it, then we can move on. It just happened in the past. I'm not arguing with you, but I don't want to be in the, we shouldn't be in the middle of it to begin with, but we are. And so I prefer to see what the courts decide, at least on our part, if we're involved in this or not. And if we're not, then we'll move forward. If we are as a litigant, I don't think we should be, I'll leave it up to Jim, but I think if we're in the middle of this thing, I don't think we should be looking at that. Okay, under new business, starting on Friday, the town of Ballston, Charlton, Milton, and the Village of Ballston Spa, we're going to start a program that's called 2021. You can go, this is to help our small businesses in town. We would like you to go to any small business in town, pizza place, barbershop. And if you spend, not if, when you spend more than $20.21, you take a picture of your receipt, you can send it into this address that the Chamber of Commerce has set up for the 4 municipalities. And every week, they will be giving away gift cards for businesses in those communities, valued at somewhere between $50 and $100. We're going to run this for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then at the end of the promotion on July 16th, someone will win a $500 gift card to spend as they see fit. So I think this is a great way to help out our local businesses, no matter where we live. There'll be, like I said, we're going to go live with this on Friday. The Chamber of Commerce has a website set up for us. I think, did I give this, guys? No, I didn't give it to you because I got it this afternoon. So tomorrow I will ask Ryan and our clerk to put this up on our sites so that people can get a little bit more information. But I think Saratoga did it, and they had a really good response to it. Mechanicville and Stillwater ran it together. they had a pretty good response to it. And we have about $5,000 to give out in gift cards over the next 6 weeks. I'll give out a shameless plug here, but our sponsors are National Grid, O'Brien's Pharmacy, Boston Spa National Bank, Henry's, the Boston Spa Professional and Business Association, obviously the Chamber, the Burnt Hills Boston Lake Professional Association, and Mangino's. Thank you to those companies and places for their donations. The next thing that I have is I received several calls today about the gypsy moth problem that we're having. The town does not partake in any spraying or arbor activities. I know they're nasty. They're all over my driveway and all over everybody else's driveway. I have a message out to the Cornell Cooperative Extension. She was supposed to send me something late this afternoon. Once again, I will ask our tech people to put that out there. If you have questions, they have a website. There's also a couple of steps you can take. It's supposed to be a 2-year cycle, so evidently we will have this problem again next year. But there are some steps you can take to prevent future progress for the rest of the year. I'm not a bug guy, but once they get to the caterpillar stage, you're kind of stuck with what you got. But there are some things we can do going forward to keep them from moving up the trees, which is where they like to be. So that's all I have. Anybody else?
I have a couple of things. First, I had sent you an email about the court, and I wanted to discuss the electric in the court, specifically our failed inspection.
Okay.
And I feel that at this point, we need to bring in our electrician. Oh, I cannot hear me, Katie. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to bring in our electrician that we have, electrical company, and get the lighting fixed so that we will pass a failed inspection. And I guess I'd put that in the form of a motion.
Well, Anthony has been in contact with our electrician, and they are working together on that.
That's not what I'm after, Benny. I want the electrician in here doing the work.
You didn't have a problem before, John, without the electrician doing the work. We sat right here.
That's correct.
Okay, and you were supposed to look at this and help Anthony out, and you didn't.
I did help Anthony out.
And now that it's not done, you want to make a bad guy out of this.
No, I'm not trying to make a bad guy out of this. I brought Anthony the tools, the proper tools to do it with, the equipment to install, and I got it handed back to me. I have no faith that it's going to get done correctly. I want the electrician brought in that's a professional in this.
I'm going to make a motion that we call Pritchard in to get this problem taken care of, and we pass the inspection. We're risking our insurance again. If anything, God forbid, ever happened in that courtroom, and the insurance company sees a failed inspection, we're going to be in trouble.
When we were cabling this building, Bill Lewis got up in the ceiling here, and every single one of these boxes failed. Every single one of these boxes had to be reconnected. But nobody sat here and screamed, "Oh my God, the building's going to catch on fire."
I didn't say.
We sat here
I'm making
and
a motion. I'm going to make a motion that we get the Pritchard in here to do what needs to be done.
I second that.
Any discussion? Brenda, poll the board, please.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes, please.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalotnik.
Yes. Anything else?
Yep, the second thing I have is that when I sit here tonight and listen to public comment, I almost feel like I should be sitting out there. It seems to be that people know about stuff at the airport before 3 of the board members here sitting here know about it. And it disappoints me that you guys know about this stuff at the airport and don't share it with us. You know, I'd certainly like to know that they were buying land.
They aren't buying land, John. They're considering buying land.
Benny, if they're considering it, they're buying it.
John,
Yes.
John, let me explain how I knew about it.
I know you go to the buildings and grounds.
No, she doesn't go.
It's because I know the people who own the land. They're related to my partner who passed away, okay? And he said to me, that his brother in Florida had listened to the meeting. And he's, you know, and that's how I found out about it, and I looked at the minutes for that meeting. So that's how I knew about it. So I kind of did have an inside track, but I kind of wish we'd be kept up to date on this also.
When I left that meeting, the decision was to consider purchasing a triangle, not 20 acres of it. The chairman of the Buildings and Grounds Committee said the county probably has no interest in buying 25 acres of land. Now, if that's what's said at the end of the meeting and things change over the next 2 weeks without meetings being held, there's no way I'm going to know about that.
And I will stand up for you on this one, Benny. I don't think the county will come up with enough money to buy that piece of property, but it is under consideration. So you can't say it's just a little triangle. So that's all I'm going to say.
That was the initial offer, was the triangle, Barb. If it's changed since that meeting, I'm unaware of that. As I'm not a member of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, what they discuss until they take a vote on the Buildings and Grounds Committee, I don't even get to know about.
I'm sorry.
No,
I just,
to me, that's a very important thing, Benny. Even if you mention that they're looking at it, you know, I would be interested in that.
They were looking at a piece of land, John, smaller than a baseball field.
I guess that's all I got.
Moving on to the final public comment of the evening. If anybody has anything they'd like to say, Sharon?
I just reread the transcript from that meeting on June 1st, and Matt Veach made a statement that he thought it was a good idea to buy all 24 acres so that he could maybe carve out a little trail system or maybe a park for the residents. And as far as the county affording it, they're only going to have to pay 5% of it. So I don't, and some other woman that's on the committee said it was a no-brainer. John Lant seconded that, it's a no-brainer. Go ahead and buy it. So to me, it's not a no-brainer. To me, it's like, leave the land alone, stay away from it, do not expand the runways. Because 3 years from now, we're going to be here, I'm telling you right now, and they're going to go over what we're going to do, and you're going to have MJ up here telling us what's going to happen with the runways in the future, because they get a chance to go and change it for the next 10 years, and that's what, mark my words. So you can, they also, none of us want to do that, but you made a statement, Benny, that you'll be the 1 in 21 people that will vote against this. Better be more than one, because Matt Veach just sat up and said, oh, I don't want to do it. And the other woman, Sue Winnie or something.
Sandra Winnie.
She said the same thing.
From Providence.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but stay away from it. I don't, this is too important. Just leave it. Do not buy town of Milton property. Let people build a house on it or something. You're going to take away somebody's house, but I understand there's a swimming pool there, a house there. That's a chunk of land. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ma'am?
Michelle Boyette, Skylar Drive. First of all, I want to thank you for looking into expanding the sound and looking at the seismology, so I do appreciate that. Also, as far as the airport, and I don't understand how everything is done, but is there any way that we can say that these properties that do become available are only for residential use? I mean, can we limit whoever purchases it and the purpose that it has? That I don't know. And then the only other question I have is, at the last meeting, June 1st, I know that there were handouts provided to the board. Is that something that is also available for the public? And where do we get those? Thank you.
To answer your question about residential use, we could label it for residential use, but being that it's owned by the county, they do not have to follow our zoning laws.
no, it's not.
Well, it would be,
Or would be then.
yeah.
But there's also a plan before there's a development plan before the planning board, but it's up to the landowners what they're gonna do with it.
Correct.
So,
Barbara can hear the area back there.
I said there's also a development plan up before the planning board. We sent it on to the planning board, but it's up to the owners as to what they, what they're gonna sell it to, or who they're gonna sell it to. And that's as far as I'm going. I'm staying out of this. I did recuse myself from any votes on this issue.
Mr. Russell.
Hello again, Frank Russell Jr., 63 Saratoga Ave, Apartment B. Is that something I said? That's my fault. That's what it is. 63 Saratoga Avenue, Apartment B, also spot here, 12020. On the topic of small businesses, I have not heard either town in the last 2 nights bring up that starting tomorrow, $800 million of funding goes up by New York State for grabs. The website actually went online today with the application. It's nysmallbusinessrecovery.com. That's nysmallbusinessrecovery.com. Any business that can show 25% reduction receipts between 2019 and 2020 with some other special sauce inside all the rules can get anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 from the state. This is a big buoy for small businesses across the state, and this should be known by more people in all townships around here especially. With respect to the corridor study, and I'm going to be, I think, fair to all municipalities when I do this. Last night I complained to the town of Ballston with their moratorium that they're not being upfront with the townspeople about the timeline ultimately of that moratorium. One member said, oh, we just need a little more time when they did the 3-month extension. They are so far away from being done with that. It's not 3 months, they'll be lucky if it's 6 months. It can be done in 6 months, which is their absolute deadline according to the current legislation. But a timeline is helpful. I'm going to say the same thing here. After speaking with Jackie and representing Mr. DeRusso, who is, I would call, one of the most important landowners left in that corridor because he owns greater than 9 acres of land that is going to be developed or redeveloped and is currently for sale or lease, as you can see on the corner. He is always in contact with people that want to use that property. There is interest, and great interest on that property, but some uses are not currently permitted. And I think continuing that conversation is important, but also the conversation needs to be, what is the timeline of all this? Because according to Jackie, we're still far away from anything solid on what's next. Last night, Supervisor Connolly admitted to us that the town of Malta approached him to write a letter in support of the roundabout at East Line Road, and they were denied the grant money. We have to really consider, and Jackie brought up grants, et cetera, and possible programs, but we have to talk to our adjoining municipalities, find out what's going on and how to avoid the same result. Because that's a $14 million roundabout possibly. That's not small change. I would really advise a timeline of both the engineering and legal aspects of this going forward to be put out. Nobody's going to hold you over a barrel about it, but just identify to the townspeople what the cost and the timing of this endeavor are, because this is not a tomorrow type thing that we're talking about. This is a long time in the future. And I sure hope that we're not playing politics with this, acting like we're rushing to get it done, when in reality, it ain't going to get done tomorrow. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Licata.
Did the court system do the inspection on the court, or how?
That was done by a certified inspector.
Okay. Second of all, I was one of 6 people last time that fought this airport extension. And if anybody wants to find out anything what's going on at the airport, there's a website that we created during this crisis to stop the airport expansion. And anything that went on during that time is on that website. We're trying to keep it up now as things go on. But We fought this last time, and I hope you can stand behind us and some of you supervisors, which I'm sure will be here. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Nick Stevens, 13 Maple Tree Road. All I want to know is where can we get the posters? I'd like some for the museum, to put some in the museum.
I have them in the back of my car. They'll be here tomorrow for distribution.
Excellent, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Owen?
Many years ago, I was on the original master plan committee for the town of Milton, and had to determine what direction the town was going to be going, what we wanted to do, who we wanted to be. Out of that master plan committee ultimately evolved the town center council. And as you know, we got involved with that. We got $1 million grant, we improved the roads. We started to make something out of our town center. We were building a community. And unfortunately, we kind of stalled because the commercial land is kind of languishing. Any businesses that happen to come in did not come in as a result of the efforts of the town of Milton. We do not have an economic development committee here. They just happen to come in by themselves. I think the focus on the Route 50 corridor, I think, is going in the wrong direction. We want to build a community for the residents of the town right here in our town center. Route 50 corridor is simply one busy traffic pattern. We are not going to get the benefit of any money that we are spending, the most benefit from it out of the town, the Route 50 corridor, but any money that we put in, it should be right here in our own town center. And I would like to see the town focus on that, not to mention establishing a economic development committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dawson.
Good evening again, Tony Dawson, Planet Waste Recycling, 274 Greenfield Avenue, Boston Spa, New York. Attending Zoom tonight, I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but there is no video. I did leave and re-entered, so I don't know if it's a problem or if there's no one there doing video. But more importantly, I have no idea what Councilwoman Kerr said in regards to her comments on the noise study and engaging a noise engineer for the study, so I'll reserve my right to provide any comment on that until after I've had an opportunity to listen to the Milton Watch YouTube video. While I'm on, earlier tonight, Michelle had commented on the equipment and how it's changed over the years, and as I recall, she also referred to it at the June 1st meeting. I would like to point out that over the years, and during the 2018 meeting, I did take the time to play a video on the history of the scrap metal industry. And although we've evolved a bit, we really haven't changed that much. We went from loading rail cars, ships, and trucks by hand to loading them with old-fashioned cable cranes with two-stroke Detroit diesel engines, along with front-end loaders and the like. Today we operate four-cylinder hydraulic cranes and material handlers and front-end loaders with low emissions, low noise, and very energy efficient. And all of our equipment is less than 5 years old. So I think that the comparison and the analogy that she was trying to make is unfounded. And I'll leave it at that. But if you would like to learn more information or see our equipment and how it operates, we'd be happy to do a demonstration for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Dave Burton, Sleepy Court, Boston Spa, New York. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak. Just real quick, do we have a new town historian?
Not new, no, Karen's been with us for quite some time.
Who is the town historian?
Karen Stalters is her name.
Oh, okay, I thought for some reason she okay. All right,
You're not quitting, are you, Karen?
What?
You're not quitting, are you?
No.
Okay.
Good. All right, thank you. And just one last thing again on the airport. Full disclosure here, back when we were dealing with a lot of the runway extensions, I was definitely had a great opportunity to sit in with Supervisor Luza and the engineers at many meetings, private meetings. Full disclosure, FAA is going to be changing the approach slopes probably in 2023. And we were told directly from McFarland Johnson engineers that what that means is that the town hall building is going to be in the obstruction-free zone eventually, which means that building is going to have to go. It won't be occupied anymore. So full transparency here, full disclosure. Just want to put that on the record so everybody's aware, not surprised when that happens. They're going to be changing the slope angles of the approach and departure. And when that happens, that building is not going to be habitable. So just so you know. And again, just to re-clarify what I was talking about with grant assurances, according to the June 1st committee meeting minutes, it looks like the committee consensus was to move forward with obtaining appraisals and report back to the committee. What that essentially means is that they purchased the property first, and with those grant assurances, the FAA will refund the town that money. So there's really no expense on their part. If they can't come to an agreement on that, if there's no agreement, any town that has it, or city that has the power of eminent domain, they can use that to actually acquire that property if they can't come to a negotiation on a price. So it's a scary time for anybody that lives around the airport. There's a lot of things that are happening here. We truly just need, our board to be together. We need somebody to stand for us, especially because 300 acres of that is right in our backyard. That's a big amount of space, and we've seen a lot of changes in that in the past few years. A lot of clear cutting, a lot of trees coming down. We've had to call out the engineers on a few things. And, the one guy's a road in their apartments over there. They wanted to clear the trees for that spotlight. And if we didn't say anything to them, they would have brought it right back to the fence. And they would have had that spotlight right in their windows. But we need somebody. We need somebody to stand for us. And, we want to be there. We can do our part and help you out as well. But we really need somebody to kind of be the voice for us and to be able to stand up and say, hey, we don't want this in our backyards. We don't want this type of growth. We want to expand. We want this to be a family community. We want to see businesses thrive and grow here and families grow here. That's not going to be allowed to happen as long as the airport is making these baby steps to expand and grow. And the word expand it's not necessarily a runway expansion, but as it expands on the inside and makes set improvements on the inside of the airport, it just sets the way for it to expand down the road. And again, like you said, Supervisor Zlotnick, you may not be here in a year or 2 years or whatever, and whoever's going to have to deal with it, but let's set the precedence for whoever does come in and say, hey, this is important to the people that live here. This is in our backyards. We want to make sure that we can continue to thrive here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Judah.
Hi, thanks Supervisor Zlotnick. This is Michelle Judah, 34 Van Tassel Lane. I missed the first half hour of the meeting, so I apologize that I might be repeating something that's already been said. But in regards to the last speaker, I really think that we have an opportunity here, or a real need to get things correct in terms of what's going on with the airport. But when we hear what's going on with Heritage Springs and what's going on with Planet, and decisions and actions of previous boards, it just really points out the imperative that the town board members as a whole, collectively, I'm speaking to all of you, do your homework and know the implications of the decisions that you're making and the decisions that the town employees are making. With regards to Planet, I really do hope, I do hear, I'll be listening to the recording, that there's going to be a legal decision forthcoming in regards to the grandfathering, status of Planet. And I think Also, there necessarily needs to be a decision as to if permits were granted improperly, and that grandfather status has been assumed, are we kind of stuck with it, even if it should not have happened years ago? We need to get that decision so that we don't just keep talking over and over about equipment and noise and, you know, the decision, there needs to be a legal decision put forth so that the parties can all decide what they want to do as the next step forward towards moving towards some final determination in regards to that, so that we're not spinning our wheels forever. And finally, I have spoken up many times at meetings in regards to fiscal reporting and fiscal accountability and the lack of fiscal reports at the meetings. So I did want to point out that I do notice that you have posted to the website. There's a May fiscal report package that I had a chance to look at a little bit this afternoon. I want to make sure that everybody else in the town is aware that it's there. It does report that you're still awaiting audit results from 2019, which isn't necessarily alarming. I know in 2020, you know, there was so much upheaval, it was difficult to get things done. But I still would like to implore that a fiscal report be put on the town meeting agenda monthly, and that we hear from the controller who can give us a summary of what his are, that we hear about audit results, and that there be more transparency in regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more, we will close the public hearing. I can respond to Ms. Judah's request. At our meeting, I asked Jim Craig and Bill Kennery to get together and do some research, and it is their decision, their considered opinion, that Planet has not been illegally grandfathered. They are properly grandfathered, and they're moving, that issue is now, as far as the town is concerned, taken care of. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
On the board, please, Brenda.
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Osaki.
Yes.
Supervisor Zerlina.
Yes. Thank you. Good night. God bless you.